Hello everybody, I'm Lorenzo Marchessi and I'm here right at the beginning of this video we're about to watch to remind you to subscribe to my channel. It's very helpful if you do, and also please tell your friends, your family members, and share it if you can. Love to hear your comments and feedback, but just want to make sure you subscribe. Thanks for watching and we'll see you soon. Hello everybody and welcome back to another episode of the Geek Authority Show. I'm your host Lorenzo Marchessi, and this is the show where I get to interview all kinds of wonderfully talented and creative people, actors, writers, directors, producers, musicians, cosplayers, creative artists, and so on and so forth. Today I have an extra special guest. He's worked behind the scenes on many a project. The geek boy in me is just screaming inside, so I'm going to try and keep this as low level as possible. Sir, I thank you so much for joining me today. And let's let everyone know you're in Florida, correct?
Yes, sir. I sure am at the moment.
And how's your weather out there?
It's warm today, believe it or not.
Okay.
Unlike everywhere else. Yeah, we're almost 90 degrees here.
Seriously?
Seriously.
Okay, now half the country just went, oh, that's...
Exactly.
Anyway. But that's a good thing.
And I'm jealous of them because I love cold weather, but that's just me.
Right. And by the way, this is Mark Bradley. I didn't even say your name.
Hi.
That's how geeky I'm getting. And you'll see why I'm so excited in a minute. And if you haven't noticed behind him, he's got an entire weaponry behind him. There's a suit back there that I need to ask. What is that? The helmet and the suit? Jacket?
Right now, ask what is it? Yeah, that's actually a prop from Battlestar Galactica and Galactica 1980, a screen-used spacesuit.
Wow. And did you have a part in designing that, or?
No, not at all. I was 11 years old at that point, so, you know.
Okay.
I'm sure I could have, maybe. I don't know. No, but that's a fan thing for me.
Okay. So you got that as you when you got older, you found it was like an auction, or?
Yeah. It was actually, this was just prior to internet, so early 90s. There was a gentleman in LA who, right time, right place, he actually purchased all of the costumes from Universal that had been used in Galactica, Buck Rogers, and some other productions. They decided to sell everything. They were moving their facility across the lot to another building, and they were purging all the stuff that they didn't use anymore. I guess sci-fi was kind of out. So they sold it all off, and he bought all of it, and he sold it off over the next decade or so. So I got several pieces from him.
Wow.
So just right place at the right time.
So you got some Buck Rogers pieces too?
No, I did not get any original. But well, I got one. I have a Galactica Warriors tunic that was actually repurposed for Buck Rogers, and I bought that. So I have one piece that was used in both. So there you go.
Wow. Okay. And for those of you who don't know, and obviously I'm giving you out my age right now, but Buck Rogers in the 25th Century starred Gil Gerard, and then of course Battlestar Galactica, the original with Lauren Green and Richard Hatch and Dirk Benedict, and then its sequel, which I think me and two other people watched, Galactica 1980, was Kent McCord and Barry Van Dyke carried on the series. So, but those were childhood fans. I've got the Blu-ray version. So, anyway, so let's go back to you. So you are in Florida. Are you a native Floridian?
I am actually born and raised in St. Petersburg, which is on the west coast of Florida. So I'm on from the west coast of the East Coast. Moved to Orlando when I was 19-ish, when production stuff, and I've been in Orlando ever since. So,
okay.
Still in Florida.
And by that, does that implicitly imply that you do a lot with Disney, maybe? A little bit?
Yeah, Yes, off and on. For Disney, at Disney, and I can explain that. But if you work in any creative field in Central Florida, it's almost unavoidable that you'll eventually work for Disney at some point, and probably also Universal. So,
So basically, you're an independent contractor for projects as they come up and go, correct?
but mostly, yeah, it's a little different each time when you're working on TV movie productions. It's for the duration of the project, but you're directly employed and you're paid through payroll and all that. But it has a finite time frame. It's 6 months or a year.
Right.
Or in case of
Like a
Sequest,
contract position. Okay.
yeah, yeah. And then other than that, it's contract work. It's project to project. It just depends.
So, what high school and college did you go to school for this art, or what
No,
was
I
what was
didn't.
your
And
path?
yeah, that's the funny part, because you occasionally get asked, what path should my kid follow if he wants to do this, and I never have an adequate answer, because there's a lot of luck involved. I finished high school, started going to community college without a completely solid direction what I wanted to do. Just figured I'd do the old 13th, 14th grade, in community college, and then find something there. And during my first year of college, um, they started doing productions over here in Orlando. And ironically, Universal had just been the the theme park was still being built, but they had finished the production studios part of Universal, and they were already doing projects here. And one of them was a TV series that I had already been watching, and I thought when that happened, they moved the TV series here from California, and I thought I got to get over there somehow and you know get some
Oh,
excuse to go there and
are
get
we
my foot in
gonna?
the
Are you
door for
gonna tell
something.
us? Are you gonna tell us what series this
Yeah,
was?
sure, sure. That was yeah, yeah. It's completely opposite end of sci-fi fandom, but it was the '80s revival series of Leave It to Beaver. It was the new Leave It to Beaver, which had started in early '80s with a TV movie reuniting the original cast, and then it went to a series, and it ran for 4 seasons. And I was a fan of the show. I like old Hollywood stuff and sets and things like that, and that appealed to me on that end. Classic TV, that sort of thing.
Right.
So it was just a show I liked, and then all of a sudden, hey, it's moving into your backyard practically. So I thought something compelled me. I had to get over here, and I came over with a halfway through excuse that I was looking towards film school, and I'd love to come over and intern or something, and it kind of got my foot in the door that way.
Okay,
Really
so
through building
you were an intern at Universal or just that
uh,
show?
in just that show, yeah. And again, when there's a TV series, even if it's in that case it was a Universal television series, it still isn't run as an independent
Right.
production company almost.
Right. Yeah.
Each show
Well,
is its own thing. It's hard to cruise it to finishes. So
right. For most people who don't know out there, the big
Mhm.
studios, Warner Brothers, Universal, Universal having two locations, and then some of the other companies having now studios in Canada and Georgia and all this other stuff. Each
Yeah,
project, each show is its own entity, so it comes in with its own budget, its own crew, its own cast, kind of thing. So it's not like you can jump from one show to another because it's on the same lot. It's all who you know. I think a lot of it, but
correct.
when did the studio open, and
It
then
is.
when did the
It is.
park open?
So the production studios were finished and operating sometime in 1988, if I'm remembering right. The first time I set foot there would have been like December of '88, and it had been in swing for several months, so I'm not sure the exact date. Uh, and that series had moved there sometime in the middle or 3/4 into 1988. And it ran. The production of that season ran into 3 or 4 months into '89. So production studios are already open then. And all the behind the scenes or the what they call back of house buildings were in place that were there for the studio part and the theme park, support services, wardrobe and merchandising and all that. And they were still building the actual theme park, the part where guests would go. So it looked like from our point of view across the fence, it looked like a big dirt pile with,
Wow.
trucks moving dirt around. And then over the next year or so, the whole theme park sprung up, and it opened in 1990. So
And
a lot of
wasn't
activity right then. I was excited.
and wasn't it a collaborative thing? No, that was Disney MGM. But then Universal
Yes.
paired up with somebody to do the with them, or was it all?
Um, no. You might be thinking of Disney MGM Studios. Parallel to Universal building, Disney down the road was building its own answer to Universal, which was kind of a reaction to Universal building a new theme park, and they were building their own what they call third gate, third theme park that was again movie studio themed, had actual
Right.
production facilities in it. So that was going on at Disney while Universal was building theirs. Now Universal had a parent company, I think it was MCA at the time.
MCA.
So I mean, I guess that's kind of a partnership.
Right.
Yeah, and
So,
there were other companies involved, I think.
so flash forward 40 years later. Now, are they still doing regular productions in Florida?
Off and on, it has slowed down a lot. It was very hot and heavy in the late 80s and through the 90s. In fact, the state offered tax incentives like Georgia's doing now, like Louisiana does now.
Right.
So that brought a lot of production there. And at the same time, you also had Disney and Universal with their new production facilities. They would romance their own productions to come here. So it was very busy throughout the 90s. I was kind of nonstop on something that was filming all the way up through 2000-ish, something like that. And then it slowed down, came and went. So there is still regular production. It's not as busy as it used to be. It's starting to come back a little bit more. In fact, yesterday there was a news article that Florida once again is bringing back legislation to offer those sort of incentives where they haven't been doing it for a while. So we're all
Right.
hoping that brings more production back.
And I've been biting my tongue a little bit because when I first moved out here in LA back in the late 80s, years ago, I I was doing a little bit of acting, and one of my calls was to the Lynn Stallmaster office, and I got to the point
Okay.
of auditioning and being photographed for what was I was told was going to be a brand new series being shot in Florida at I think it's Universal,
Okay.
Superboy.
Yes. Well, Superboy was both at Disney and Universal.
That's what I heard, and they
It started at Disney.
Oh,
Yeah,
did it really?
Yeah,
Okay.
it was when it first started up, and this was going on parallel to other things I was working on. So I would, everybody was very aware of it. It was at Disney. I don't know how many seasons because the show ran for several seasons. It was at least one full year at the Disney Studios, and then it
Four
moved to
seasons.
Universal.
Yeah, 4 seasons.
Right,
And then it changed its lead because the guy.
yes, it did.
So that was
Correct.
weird.
Yes, yeah, that was big news here, and there's always scuttlebutt about that sort of thing.
Okay.
But it happens. It happened.
Right. And another one of my favorite, especially the first season, Hollywood shows, moved from
Yes.
Universal Studios Hollywood to Universal
Right.
Studios Florida, and that's the shirt you're wearing.
Yeah. Okay.
Sequest.
Yes.
Did you work on Sequest as well, or no?
I certainly did. Yes, I was on that show the full 2 seasons it was here, soup to nuts, start to finish. Definitely a highlight of my production experience here.
So what were you hired as?
So I had always done something. All my jobs in production had all been something art related, but they were always something slightly unusual in that there wasn't always, or there usually wasn't a set job description like we're looking for somebody to do this. So a lot of times it was freelance work. I did some other TV series prior to Sequest that were mostly contract work. We need somebody to build this or this, and it was building props and various things, repurposing other things, building things from scratch. I also build models occasionally. It was a model project. But when it came to Sequest, I was actually hired on full time as part of the crew, but they plugged me into a job title as art department assistant. And of course, that's very vague, but it allowed me to just be there under a title and do the 2 or 3 things that I did. A lot of jobs are very specific. Set designers very specific. Art directors very specific. Lighting, camera, all of those are very, very specific jobs. So I was doing
Property masters, that kind of thing.
exactly. They're very well defined. But I was, and not just me. There's other people with similar jobs. But
you
what I did was under a title, but it allowed me to kind of do whatever.
Yeah, you created some of the props that on camera that were used, or like the set
Sure.
pieces too. You mentioned remodeling
Yeah,
that.
yeah. So on Sequest, it was primarily very heavy with graphic design, and I always try to clarify because if you're familiar with the show, there's a lot of animated graphics that are either the CGI. I did anything that was graphic arts related that you saw on the show that was not that. So it's anything from logos and signs and lettering, which on that show had a lot of it.
Oh
Some
my
shows
God.
don't have a lot of that stuff.
Okay.
Go
Was
ahead.
this yours?
Connection? Oh yeah. That is not something I made, but I did deal with that logo a lot. Now the show moved, was first season. Most of the development of the series, the brilliant design of the series was done in the first season, and everything moved out here. And so we kept with, all of that style for the most part. But there was always additional stuff, episodic things. They go to a place that they, say a mining company. Well, what would a mining company have as their signage and logos in this facility, in the year 2018, and so it was that kind of thing. So it was a very good creative atmosphere to just kind of make up things that, per the script, per what's needed,
Right.
going to locations and deciding what needed to be covered up at the existing location with futuristic signage or lettering or whatever. So
Was
all of that kind of stuff.
all this hand drafted and created, or did you do it on a computer? Because we're talking 90s here, right?
Mostly computer.
So
Well, true. Yeah. And this was kind of the dawn of a lot of that stuff. In fact, occasionally I would kind of run into the problem where traditionally in production prior to around that time, sign making fell to the paint department. And there would be some people within the paint department who had very specific sign lettering skills. Of course, on this series, we're in the future, signage shouldn't look hand painted. It would be appropriate for a different show. So the computer designed and generated stuff was far more appropriate. And of course, we could do more faster with that technology. So in-house, we had large format color printers. We had vinyl cutters.
But aren't we talking like the discs, the 7-inch discs computers, or are we past that?
No, we're actually talking the small. Look what I have here.
Oh,
we were at that stage already. Fortunately,
I remember those.
So that's mostly how that. Yeah, in fact, this one, may actually be
that's 3.5-inch floppy, right? 3.5-inch floppy.
Yes, correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the save icon for those who aren't familiar with it.
Right.
On your computer, you click save.
And I don't know if people know, but inside there's a piece of plastic that spins and stores the data. It's not like it is today,
That's
where
right.
you get a little chip.
That's right.
So it's
Correct. Yeah.
So
yeah.
was that harder? Was that harder? Did it render? The rendering time take forever?
Sometimes. I mean, the computer I was using at the time was a 486. I don't remember all the numbers, but I mean, at the time it was a nice computer.
State of the art.
There would be some lag. For the most part, it was not. It was state of the art at the time, absolutely. So it really wasn't too bad. Sometimes large print jobs, when we're printing big color things that had a lot of elements, a little bit, but not bad.
I got two big questions. Did you have anything to do with the graphics that were on I think there were 32 displays on the monitors? The graphics for the
and that's
torpedoes and all that.
Right, the moving. Yeah, no, that was not me, and that was the distinction I was actually trying to make, because on this particular show, that could easily get confused. No, there was an entire department that did that, and they were called video playback, and nice group of people, one of the hardest working, crews on the show, because as you can imagine, there's a lot of that every episode. And they would actually create those animations.
Right.
They're very pixelated by today's standards. It worked as a display. It made sense within the story. Yeah, the animated graphics on the screens that the actors would see, that was an entire department unto itself, called the video playback department. And they would create those animations per episode, per script, whatever was needed. And then they would set up their various projectors. They had what was at the time, very high-end, state-of-the-art projectors, and they would project them from behind onto the screens that are built into the sets. So that was a whole department by itself, and I always like to make that distinction. That was not the stuff I was doing. I was doing.
So those were film projections? I thought they were video feeds.
Some were video feeds. You can tell the difference because if they're large screens, they were scrims or screens that were projected from behind. If they were on the small little flat screen monitors, then same department was feeding those into the little screens.
Right, because I read in the book. I read in the book they had a syncing issue where they had to sync to film because Sequest was shot on film, actual film. Most shows are done in HD now, so there's no film involved. But back then it was film, so they had to sync the TV monitor to the film, and film is 24 frames a second, and video is like 32, something like that.
Yeah, that was a very common thing. Again, like you said, it's not a big deal today because of flat screens and digital TVs, and I guess even back then, even the little flat screens we use, they have a flicker rate, and of course the camera. Yeah. Well, exactly, and the camera, your eye doesn't see it because it's very fast, but it's the same as film. Film is made up of individual frames put through the camera at a certain rate, and if those two aren't synced, that's where if you film a TV set, you get this bar in front of it, or the flicker rate.
The jarring.
Correct. Anyway, and that was the biggest job of the video playback department, even on other shows, was to deal with that flicker rate.
Wow. Okay, second part of my question. Did you have anything to do with Darwin?
No, I did not. In fact, Darwin had his own little apartment on the soundstage, and he had his own crew. They were very nice people, but I really didn't interact with them very much because they did their very specific job. And they would, in the scenes where Darwin was, which was mostly in those pool sections of the set, they would come do their thing during those scenes. And those were usually very specific scenes, for that sort of thing.
Can you talk about, did you see Darwin at work?
Oh, yes, absolutely. There was a full Darwin, and then there was a half Darwin.
I was hoping you were going to tell us what we're getting at, people.
Well, I guess it's okay now.
It's been 40 years.
Yeah, I think we're okay to say that. Yeah. In my experience in the 2 years, and as I understand it throughout the series, even when it was the first season in California, Darwin was never ever a real dolphin. The only exception to seeing real dolphins on screen on the show were the stock footage in the title sequence, or occasionally there would be some underwater stock footage of a dolphin swimming. But even that was pretty rare. But otherwise, it was computer generated animation, of course, when you're seeing him underwater. But anytime he was interacting with an actor or on set, that was not a real dolphin.
Animatronic.
Even the scenes with Bridger in the first season, it was an animatronic. It was they call it a puppet because it was all hand puppeted. So it had some servos, I believe, and things. But generally speaking, there's a guy in the water with it, or two guys, or three guys, puppeting the dolphin. And I always like to say that the advantage they had was that real dolphins look plastic to begin with. So in a way, it wasn't that hard to have a real-looking dolphin puppet.
I thought you were going to say something like, well, real dolphins eat a lot more than humans do, because I would imagine
that's true.
Like that.
Yeah.
But the tank.
That was the one thing.
The tanks on the ship were real. The real water, those tubes, all of that was real water. I'm curious. Did they build the set under something to catch all the water when they did the water sequences?
Well, there were too many places that there were water. The largest pool area was
Moon pool, they called it, right?
the moon pool, which was the bridge set. Excuse me, the bridge, and then what they called the moon pool slash sea deck. Those sets you couldn't tell on the show, but they were back to back. You could walk right from one to the other through a little piece of hallway. They weren't meant to be on the ship, but
Right.
And the reason they were built together was that they were all built on top of the pool element that was underneath the set. So what they did was, on the clean soundstage floor, before they built the rest of the set around it, they built the pool sections, which was concrete walls with plexi embedded, where you had the little windows, just like a real pool would be concealed. Big expensive part of the set. And then the rest of the set, which was up a level, a few feet, top of and around those elements. So that pool you saw on the bridge was the front end of the same pool you saw, the same water holding tank that you saw in the moon pool and the sea deck. You could kind of go from one to the other underwater, or So, wow. And then the other major area of water was not connected with that set. In fact, for us, it was a whole different soundstage. The other area of water were the dolphin tubes.
Right. There was also the hallway, the corridor. There was a couple of those with the tubes in it.
Yes. Correct.
So,
that was the one side of the tube, and the other side of the tube.
Right. So the other thing I want to tell you is, when I first moved out to California, I was working on, I don't know if it was Quantum Leap or something like that, and Sequest had the biggest soundstage. I believe it was number 2, and I actually got to, I kind of snuck in with people that I knew, and let me tell you, the technology behind the set was amazing. The bridge alone, with everything behind what was going on, and the camera only sees like this much, but it's much huger than you could ever imagine. And it's all plywood. It's like
it was a massive set.
Yeah, one side you look at it, it's wood, and then you come around,
that's normal.
Painted metal, and it was amazing. It was amazing.
Yes. Right. Oh yeah, absolutely.
Okay, I'm geeking out again. Here we go.
Most sets are wood, All
right,
please, that's good.
All right, so let's go with some of these wonderful images that I pulled from your, I believe, Flickr site. You said, and I'm going to blow this up. What are we looking at?
Sure. Yeah. Okay. Okay, this is the recently opened. I say recent. It was probably getting close to 2 years ago now. The Galaxy's Edge land at Disney Hollywood Studios, Disney World in Orlando. There's a duplicate of the same land at Disneyland in California. I have not physically been to the one in Disneyland since they opened that, but I did a good amount of prop work for 3 years or so, building stuff for that park. For both, actually. Everything I did was duplicated twice, so half of it went to the Florida park, half of it went to the California park. So it was just various prop stuff, and for me, it kept me very busy. But I was just one of many people building pieces for these theme parks.
Here's one of my loves, Galactica.
Yes, we did. Yeah. This is just a personal project of mine. Those are for people to do sci-fi modeling, there's kind of a sub hobby called studio scale, where it's not simply building a model of whatever spaceship you like. It's attempting to replicate the actual filming miniature. And so that's what this shuttle is in the background.
Right.
And the idea is to replicate it using the same kit-bashed model kit parts that the originals use. So there's a lot of research involved in literally finding the 3 parts out of a tank kit that they used for that. And
do you know who designed the Viper and the Galactica and the shuttle? I mean, was it John Dykstra?
Yeah, he was involved. I don't remember who did all what. I know that some of
or was it Ralph McQuire? Because didn't they hire him?
Yeah. The concept stuff, I think, came mostly from Ralph McQuarrie, Buck Rogers and Galactica. I know there was a change in, handing of the baton from Ralph McQuarrie to somebody else at some point during the production, and they continued to develop the same designs. So, Ralph McQuarrie, most famously, concept designer for Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, I guess Return of the Jedi.
And that's everything from the ships to Darth Vader. I mean,
everything. In fact, as I understand it, he was hired by George Lucas very early on just to sort of sell the idea of this space opera he wanted to make, and so he painted not just ship designs but entire scenes
right.
to illustrate the mood.
Right. If you look at like the classic one of R2 and C3PO in the desert with the,
yes.
the it's almost duplicated in the movie perfectly.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
All right, what do we got here? This is a miniature.
Yeah. That's a miniature. As much as I love doing models, I haven't, being in Florida production, there really weren't that many opportunities to do actual filming miniatures. Most of that, even for productions that were based in Florida, that sort of post-production or second unit type photography is still done in California for the most part. Because really it requires specialized camera work, but definitely specialized shops usually to do that sort of thing. And they're mostly still based out west. So this is a chance I had to do a miniature. This was for a really wonderful movie called Problem Child 2 that was done at the Orlando Universal. Not exactly Oscar winning, but like I say, a lot of these productions are a lot more fun to work on than they are to watch sometimes.
But it's funny. How long did it take you to make that?
That was, I don't know. That's really, I actually had some miniature houses already, and then a couple of them are kits, like HO scale kits. So this was probably only a couple weeks worth of work. And this was for a scene that ultimately got cut from the movie. But it was for a shot of the neighborhood looking down into the backyard, which is in the center of the model there. Wow. So that's really all that was. Again, that's just a personal thing. That is a replica of the, again, it's a replica of the filming miniature of the little shuttle from Buck Rogers, the shuttle he's frozen in and for 500 years. Then he wakes up in the 25th century. I got an opportunity through a trade to get a copy of the original filming miniature, and so there was a lot of work to be done to it to fix it up. So this is the result of that. Again, a personal project. I grew up on these shows.
Absolutely. Where do you keep? You have that? Is that somewhere in a like a pristine cabinet?
It is. Sort of. I just this past year finished up a challenge. I don't have enough space for all the stuff I have, and that's always a challenge. It's on a shelf right now. It's on a shelf with a bunch of other similar miniatures.
This is what the model looks like before, correct?
Yeah, and so again, that's a Buck Rogers ship. Same story. In the same trade, I got a casting of this fighter, which is the bad guy Draconian fighter from Buck Rogers from the original pilot movie. And from that, I reworked it I basically rebuilt it and made a kit out of it. That's one of the final assembled pieces. But that's a copy of the miniature. It's the same size as the filming miniature. Same detail, everything.
No, are there lights in it?
I sold a few kits,
Did you put lights in it? Or
no? Not in that one, no. I did not. No, not in that one.
Do you do that?
My Galactica shuttle, I've got lights in, but sometimes, yeah, sometimes.
The Battlestar Galactica, yeah, you lit up?
No, I don't have. Well, the Galactica shuttle is what I was saying. The little shuttle, previous picture.
Yeah, because I prefer.
Yeah, I've got lights in that.
And don't get me wrong, I like the new Battlestar, the Rick Berman remake of reboot of the Battlestar. Yeah, but I like the traditional ships. I like the 1978 Vipers and the Galactica.
Same way. Obviously, I feel the same way. Actually, I didn't send you a picture of it. I should have. I still can.
Yes.
I got to rebuild and restore the original miniature of the Galactica itself, the 6-foot model, for Universal Florida in 1990.
So the Battlestar Galactica is from, you said, California?
Yeah. So in when they were building the theme park, and I was doing several jobs in and out. I was in the building, so lots of stuff that was going on. I got to, stick my ear in the room and say, hey, I do that kind of stuff. Do you need something? So long story short, I ended up with the project of restoring, or at least reassembling and restoring as best I could, a couple miniatures from Battlestar Galactica that they had, the Florida theme park studio had purchased them from the California studio, oddly enough, all within Universal, but they shipped them out here, but they were in bad shape. So I took a few pieces home to my own shop area and restored them as best I could within a couple weeks. They weren't too bad except for the Galactica itself. It's a 6-foot model and covered in model kit parts. So lots of stuff was broken. The landing bays on the bottom had been shattered because the whole thing had been dropped at one point. So I was able to reassemble, rebuild the whole thing, touch up paint so they could put it on display. And it was on display at the Florida studio for a few years until they recreated it. And it's in the hands of a private collector now, thankfully. But for a while it was on display there. So I got to handle the original, which was really fun for me as a big fan of the series.
Did you do the launch bays too? Did you put the detail there?
I had to rebuild the launch bays. Yeah, the launch bays in that model were actually little printed circuit boards with little incandescent lights mounted to them for the little tracking lights that you see in the model when they're approaching the landing bay. Those were actually built into the model. But at some point, the lights in there had gotten too hot, or they left them on too long, sometime prior to when it was out here, and it had melted all the detail inside. So I had to take that all apart, rebuild the little detail of the little beams and everything, and put it all back together.
And I bet you did you use LEDs versus, because back then they probably used light bulbs, right?
Yeah, they were actually tiny little incandescent bulbs. That part I didn't have to repair the actual electronics. The electronics still worked after all that time.
Oh, wow.
But the incandescent bulbs had melted all the little plastic detail around it. So fortunately, I didn't have to rebuild any of that. It was built really, really well, especially for the time period. You can tell a lot of money went into this model.
Oh,
and,
wow. And someone has it right now?
So that all still worked. The lights in the inside. Yeah, so today it's in the hands. It had been in the hands of a private collector somewhere in the Northeast, along with a lot of other miniatures he had collected. And then, as I understand it, a couple of years ago, he sold his entire collection to somebody overseas, and I don't know where it is now, but it's still in the hands of a private collector, which is great because it's all preserved. The studio treats these things mostly as, property. Is it useful? Is it not? They tend to get rid of stuff when it's not useful because, storage is real estate.
Paramount did the same thing with the Star Trek stuff with Sotheby's, and a lot of it went to private collectors.
Same thing.
Okay,
exactly.
Everyone's favorite home, everyone's favorite mom.
Yes, cozy.
So tell us about
you can see Mom in the window up there.
Did you put Mom in there too?
Did I what?
Did you put Mom in there too?
Yeah, it's just a shadow. You can't quite see it, but the curtain's pulled open. It's just a silhouette. This is a model. It's 1/4 inch scale, which 1/4 inch equals a foot. So the house itself is about yay big on a little base with trees and stuff. One of the passions of mine is backlot buildings, mostly Universal backlot. So I got a lot of esoteric knowledge about the sets that have been on the Universal backlot going all the way back to the 30s. And of course, the Psycho House is everybody's favorite iconic thing. I know a lot about the history of that, but I also I was a fan of that movie series prior to coming to Orlando and prior to working in this industry. But one of the first 3 or 4 jobs I had, I was able to work on the 4th movie, the 3rd sequel, Psycho 4, which was filmed at Universal, Florida. Mm-hmm. And so I was able to work in the art department there. I did some model work, not model work that appears on screen. There's a lot of model work that's done in productions that is used either for the set builders to reference or the director to reference when plotting out his
yeah, and let me tell you, your little model there looks better than the actual house that's still sitting at Universal.
Well, of course, of course, it's a lot newer than that too. So, that model's 30 years old, but the original house is now 60 something years old, so more than that. Um, so the only connection this model truly has to the production is I was able to use the set blueprint, so it's accurate. And the paint, the yellow paint on this is the same batch of yellow paint we painted the set with.
Yeah,
In
yeah.
that movie, they do flashbacks to Norman's childhood, so of course the house is not dilapidated; it's new and fresh. And so for those scenes, the house was painted as you see it here, yellow and white, and didn't feel that scary. It just felt very cozy
Right.
until
Yeah,
you got
it
into this.
looks beautiful. All right, what do we got here?
These are costumes. For several years, I built costumes for Walt Disney World for a yearly event they had called Star Wars Weekends, where they would. It was 3, 4, 5, 6 weekends in a row, depending on what year it was. Late 90s through the early 2000s, they had it every year, and they would have Star Wars costume characters. They started out with a few costumes that they had gotten through Lucasfilm, and I started by repairing some of those. But then when some of the prequel movies started going out, they wanted to represent some of those characters in the park. So I was building every couple of years. I was building new character costumes from those prequels, and these are two of the costumes I built. So I did these costumes head to toe.
Now,
I hired out some sewing, things like that.
was there like multiple sets of like the Boba costume or just one?
Yes. If I'm remembering right, it depends on which costume. A lot of those we had at least two sets of everything. Uh, some of them there was only one because it's all a budget thing, you
Right.
know. They would like to have multiples of everything, but it's budget and time. And in this case, we had a short time frame to get. I think I did like 8 or 9 costumes within a 3 month period, so we didn't have duplicates of some stuff. But I was there to repair things, so you just keep it going for a month and you're good. We know what
All
that
right.
is.
My favorite show, one of my favorite shows. This is
Yes,
Sequest,
yes.
everybody. Sequest. What do you call them? Communicators?
They called them VPALs, VPAL, and um, what does that stand for? Video. It stood for something. Oh, I know this. Um, I'm sure Sequest fans hearing this are screaming the answer. But it was basically the communicator.
Did they
Okay, well
actually
that's okay.
say the name? Did they say the name of it on the show? I don't remember.
Yeah, they did. They did, but they called them VPALs, but they didn't refer to them very often. And again, this was one of the very high concept things that they developed
Oh,
for the first
that's
season.
right. That's a
That was
concept.
just
That's a
beautiful.
question for you. How did you guys are projecting to 2018? At the time, this was 1990s. So you're doing 30 years into the future.
Correct.
Did you guys take into account like real science? Did you have an advisor, or was it just makeup, made up all the way?
Um, well, that's any the fans of the series know very well. There was kind of a 3 seasons, and it was almost 3 different shows, 3 seasons each season. The first season, even though they were developing it more or less as a Star Trek underwater, one of the hooks was to try very hard to stick to known science, maybe extrapolate it into the future, but draw the stories out of as close to real science as they could. So most of what was developed for the first season, which we continued to use season 2 and 3, was very much science fact based. When the show moved to Orlando, there was a directive to kind of punch it up, make it a little more exciting, a little more sexy, a little more young, and of course, to them that meant more science fictiony. So we definitely pulled away a bit more from the science fact and dove headlong into the monster of the week sort of science fiction stories. But the
Which was
foundations were still there, which is to me is what made it work. The foundations of
which
the
is why
technology.
season one was my favorite as far
Yeah,
as this.
absolutely. It is for most people, absolutely. And I was a fan of the show before it came here, so that's what drew me to it. I'm sure the writers felt it was a little limiting, maybe.
Right.
I don't know, but I
Did
think
you
they went.
enjoy?
A lot of people feel like they went in the other direction.
Did you enjoy the storylines with Kent McCord and the aliens that they introduced?
Yeah, it got a little silly, but To me, yeah, killer plants. Again, often more fun to work on than to watch. I'll give you that. I mean, I kind of enjoyed it all just because I don't know, enjoy the characterizations. You know, we got a really good direction here. We got a good blending of first and second season, what made each good, and now we're off and running. And then we got canceled after 13 episodes. But
right, and I gotta say
it is
that
what it is.
I got one of my big pet peeves of the show was why do they have to blow it up every season?
Mm-hmm. Oh, I know. Yeah. Well, now technically they didn't blow it up the second season. The aliens did something to put it back together and then dropped it back in the cornfield. So it technically wasn't completely destroyed. But
okay,
yeah, that was.
We'll go with that.
Yeah.
Wink, wink. Whatever you say.
I'll say it was the same sets and they didn't move, so we'll put it that way.
Yeah. Somebody as intelligent as these aliens would blow something up or remove it and then, let's put it back together the way
put it back together. Yeah.
I don't
forget it ever
anyway,
happened.
All right, for those who are fans of Harry Potter, check this out.
Mm-hmm.
What do we got going here?
So that is what they call an art director's model that I did some work on as the original Wizarding World of Harry Potter was being built at Universal in Orlando. Of course, they've duplicated the same attraction in California now.
But wait. Is that true? Because I think your Galaxy's Edge is bigger than our Galaxy's Edge, and your Harry Potter is bigger than our Harry Potter.
You know, I don't actually know the full answer to that. You may be right. I know the configurations are slightly different. I know in the case of the Harry Potter attraction, they wanted to duplicate it. They wanted to literally take all the plans, everything we did, just plop it in California. Of course, you really can't do that.
We don't
various reasons. Yeah, well, yeah, earthquakes are one. You know.
Well, wait a minute. Do you know one third? Okay, let's say 1/5 of part of the Universal attraction is built on a parking lot.
Yes.
Structure?
Oh yeah, which is also built on landfill from much longer ago. And they actually, when they were building the Potter land in California, as the story I got from a coworker, they were venting something from way underground from the landfill that had been covered over for decades. I mean, as you know, that piece of land is all chopped up. It's not level. It's not Florida, of course. And there all kinds of changes in the last 50 years have gone on that lot. It used to be just a movie studio, and then they started adding theme park attractions and more of that stuff, and they would just kind of pile it on, as best they could with the building standards and the space they had. So they have unique challenges out there.
Right.
So, they couldn't quite completely duplicate it. They weren't starting from scratch, but so yours may be smaller. It probably is. And definitely now because it's expanded in Orlando.
Okay.
This was to go back to the model.
You've got 3 rides, right? We only have 2 there.
Yeah, we've got. Well, let's see. Oh, you're taxing my brain now. Let's see.
Uh-oh.
In the original land, it happens easily. In the original land, Wizarding World, they called it. You've got Hogsmeade, the village, and then you've got behind that the Hogwarts Castle School. There's a ride in and under the castle. There's actually 2 rides within Hogsmeade. One of them that just opened last year, a motorbike ride, which is amazing. I worked on that a lot. It's not amazing because I worked on it. It was amazing because they designed it that way. And then there's a smaller ride that's more for kids.
Is it the same design like the Tron thing that you're supposed to get that we won't?
No, it's not the same ride system, and it's not the same design. Other than I think the Tron thing is also similarly a motorcycle type thing. I'm not that familiar with the Tron project, although I've seen it going on. But it's the Potter ride, it's
open in Japan, right? It's built.
I think it is. I'm not sure. I've been buried in Universal stuff the last 3 or 4 years.
Sorry,
not paying as much attention to Disney. I don't know. But that was just an art director's model. I did some work on it. It was a model that was built by the actual movie miniature people in the UK, sent over here. We used it to film commercials with before the park was built. I had to tear it apart and rebuild parts of it. I had to alter parts of it as the design changed. So that's what that picture was. That's just
Okay.
additional model work, matching other people's work, which is also a challenge.
And this, I believe you said, was for toys, for marketing.
Yeah. So there's a correct. There's a small company called Zika Toys. You can see the little sign down there. It's mainly run by one guy, really nice guy named Craig, and he, like a lot of us, big fan of some of these franchises from the 70s and 80s, and
Oh,
his company created those 8-inch figures of some of the class, and this was simply a display area for him to take his product to trade shows. So it was fun to be able to actually make a Buck Rogers project, work with him. I also built some backgrounds for his photography for the packages of the figures, little environments for the toys to stand in. So
yeah.
again,
This would be great for him to do the photographs for the product, for the the marketing of it. But what's funny is people looking at this.
Yeah, I think he actually did use it for that.
Right, and funny looking at this, the actual, like, the little, what do you call it, the dots for the park, I don't know what you call it, the roadway, that's actually on the show.
Right.
The ships would go on these.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
it's like only a nerd like me would do that.
Oh yeah, we're out there. We do stuff.
Okay, back to Star Wars.
Yeah,
I see models back there.
This was a convention set. Yeah, there's some models up there. So this was there was a period for a few years where there was not a lot of production work and so I would fill a lot of my time, kind of doing stuff. The fun stuff always ends up leading to other work, which is great. So, but you got to keep your hands moving. You got to keep doing stuff. So this was a lot of personal stuff done for convention setups. We did booths at conventions with the Star Wars costuming clubs, the 501st and the Rebel Legion costuming clubs. So this was one of their large yearly or every couple of years Star Wars celebration conventions that they had. This one was in Orlando. So we basically set up a Rebel base. So this was one of the little corners of it. This is supposed to be pilot gear. That's why you see a couple of the ship models, almost like a pilot's lounge kind of thing.
Yeah. Okay.
So
this looks like a set, actually.
Yeah, that's another end of the same setup and just more Rebel base stuff. So I built all those computers and displays. The droid back there belongs to a friend of mine, my next door neighbor. Actually, we have a weird neighborhood.
I want to move there.
A lot of fans. Yeah, it's fun. He has a DeLorean too, so it's a weird little neighborhood.
Is he a collector
it's mostly
or a model maker?
Yeah, he actually works for Universal still currently, doing prop stuff for their shows and some of the rides and things. Yeah, I've known him since I came to Orlando, and we like all the same stuff and build stuff personal and professionally. So that's Galaxy's Edge. That's more props I did for the theme park a couple years ago. That's a Y-wing pilot helmet, and you can see just the corner of a Mandalorian jetpack right there.
Yeah, and these are in cages.
The fun part about that project was, it's all supposed to look like surplus gear in cases. Of course, they don't want you to touch it because obviously, they have things they call within guest reach and not within guest reach, and that dictates what it's made out of and how durable it has to be. So if they put it in a place that's unreachable, you can use different materials and all that kind of stuff. The fun part about the projects for Galaxy's Edge were we got to use sometimes the original molds for the original props from the movies, and or sometimes 3D model of the original props. That's the case for this particular helmet here. We actually had access to the original mold of helmets from Return of the Jedi, which were found in the middle of the project, found in a crate by the the main guy we worked through, super creative guy, that hired a lot of us to do this work. He went out and scavenged through the Lucasfilm archives and found molds and all kinds of things. It was amazing. This is more bits and pieces I did for Galaxy's Edge. Those aren't all mine.
Is this a droid factory?
Go ahead. Yeah, this is the droid shop where you can buy droid merchandise. You can build a small droid replica that runs remote control. But all the decoration, is to look like you're in a used droid parts factory, basically. And I made a few of those things, hanging the head, some of the arms. Those are some of the pieces I did.
Wow, I think that's the last one that I pulled from your Flickr. So,
Can
I make a few commentaries on the whole Galaxy's Edge thing?
No absolutely.
No offense to your work.
You're not going to hurt my feelings.
No offense to your work.
No.
The props are amazing. It's great to look at. But the land was a big disappointment to me. And I could start with the Millennium Falcon ride, and even include what's it called, Rise of the whatever it's called,
Rise of the Resistance.
Yeah, it didn't have it was missing a lot of things to me. I didn't feel as immersed as I thought I would. In terms of the whole look. I mean, everything is don't touch. Everything is distant. Everything's in cages.
Right.
So it's like, of all the lands in Disneyland and Disney World, it's the least land-like to me. There's no character.
I see what you're saying. Yeah, absolutely.
There's no music.
Right.
It's cheaper to buy food at another land than Star Wars.
Yes, that is true.
They had a policy about their kyber crystals that changed literally every day.
Right, I heard about that.
Yeah, it just
a lot of it definitely felt like they're still feeling their way through a lot of it. And I've heard all these same comments before. And you're not going to hurt my feeling because I was basically a vendor and a fan, of course. So from the point of view of, it was fun to work on. I think it was such a large, ambitious project from such a large franchise that, where do you go? How do you do that? And, down to the idea of, are we setting this in the current
But here's the thing.
Sequel timeline or whatever? No. Yeah.
But here's the thing. Disney didn't think that way. Disney was like an immersive family experience. When you go to Star Wars, there's certain things you need to see or feel or hear to be part of that experience. And from my perspective, they've got 40 years of movies, TVs, cartoons, all kinds of music and things to pick from to give it that. We wanted this unique experience. I don't want a unique. When I go see Peter Pan, I don't want a 2020 version of Peter Pan. I want Peter Pan.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I think they missed the mark. Now, but my little last part of my rant is the Millennium Falcon ride. Have you been on it?
Yes, a few times.
Have you been the gunner?
I don't think I have.
Let me tell you. Here's what you do.
Pilot.
Let me show you how to be the gunner. You ready? Are you watching?
Yeah, go ahead. I need this. Of course. Not a lot different from being the pilot, which is...
Are you watching? Yeah. I don't want you to miss it. I want you to get everything.
Right.
What were they thinking?
Like
Star Tours where you do nothing is more fun than that. And it's like... Anyway, what do I know?
Sure.
But here's the
from
problem.
My perspective, I have a weird little, and I've heard all these things before. It's kind of like some of the sequels. It's like I can't disagree with the criticisms, but I still enjoy it, kind of thing. But from my point of view, it was different in that I'm so focused on environments and sets that to me, it was a win just to be able to walk into the Millennium Falcon. And I think, again, that was probably their biggest asset, but it was also probably their biggest restriction, because how much can you do with that? You can't.
Well, and let me counter that with walking
Yeah.
into that back lot or back whatever you call it, the Galaxy's Edge, and seeing
Right.
the full
Right.
size Millennium
Mhm.
Falcon just was
Exactly.
amazing. Was amazing.
Right.
Okay, that in
Right.
itself it was
Right.
was worth the first entrance.
Absolutely.
But
Yes.
but I got a
Hmm.
feeling they really didn't talk to park goers who are Star Wars fans who
Right.
understand the whole community of theme park. And as a result, they said, okay, let's
Right.
make a ride where we give half the controls to one side, half the controls to the other side, and wonder
Yeah.
why nobody can land the damn thing because who drives a car with half a wheel?
Right. Right. Or two drivers.
Did none of these designers ever have a Game Boy or a joystick or
Right. Right.
what?
Yeah. And my commentary on that would be, and again, I can't disagree. But having been in the theme park business and being there when all this stuff is developed, um, it's almost a miracle any of this stuff gets done to begin with. Because number one, you've got a lot of input from a lot of people. That's your first thing, you know.
Too many cooks in the
Um,
kitchen.
that too many cooks in the kitchen. I can't say that it's not necessary because this is big stuff. This is not making just a movie. This is construction. This is engineering. This is public safety. All that. So you got all those people, with input, but then you've also got 1,004 variables that all have to be satisfied, like safety, like crowd flow. Um,
Okay,
and
and
of
I
course, in
agree.
2020, they added a whole bunch of other things.
Right,
Yeah.
and I agree, but let me tell you this: in our version of Galaxy's Edge, there's the queue for the Millennium Falcon. There's nothing. There's no interaction. There's
Yeah.
no droid. There's no music. There's no. It's
Right.
like you wait for four
Right.
hours doing nothing.
Hmm. Right.
Um, and if
Right.
you go on Peter
Well,
Pan,
I will say
wait
that I do.
two
I do
hours.
know.
What? Go ahead.
Oh yeah. I will say that, and hopefully it's not giving away anything. Hopefully violating an NDA, but there was stuff planned that is not there now. And one of the to me the larger elements that pared down at some point. They call it value engineering, by the way. Value
Right.
engineered out was live actors. Even within the queue lines, there were things planned for that, as I understand it. Which also means it can at some point be introduced into the park. In fact, I tend to believe that if it hadn't been for 2020, that stuff would be happening already because they got to the point of opening by cutting this, cutting
Well,
that, to get it
I
done,
think
and then bring that stuff back. I still think it may come back in the future. There are
yeah,
places for it. There's infrastructure for that
right,
in
and
this park.
I can see why they might want to do it, but they already lost so much money on what they released, and the whole process of
Yeah.
we've had I don't know what it is in Florida, but in California they have billboards. Go see Galaxy's Edge. You got to go see. But the signs and the
Oh,
billboards
absolutely.
don't tell you that you need to go before 8 o'clock in the morning. You need to be there and
Right.
activate your app, and there's a
Yep.
99% chance you won't get on the ride
Won't
the
get on the
entire day.
ride. I know. Yeah,
So,
it's the same here. It's a little bit different. I mean, there's more and more spread out here. But that seems to be the nature of theme parks now. Universal is facing the same exact challenges. Slightly different because it's slightly different venues and rides. Um, but it really is the nature of things here in that business, in that industry of theme parks. Being from Florida, I grew up at Disney World, so I've seen all the different iterations and the different philosophies, even just as a park goer from when I was before I can remember, and seeing the industry grow and develop and change even what their aim is, what their audience is, that sort of thing. And it is constantly changing. It's part of what's fascinating about being on the inside is dealing with all those changes, dealing with all those variables. But they are challenges that they always have in the forefront of their mind. Crowd flow, guest satisfaction, that sort of thing. They almost trip over themselves trying to accomplish those things, and sometimes you don't hit the mark. Sometimes you think this is what people are really going to like, and it isn't. Sometimes the most basic thing that was an afterthought turns out to be what people really love. And so they try to follow that. So it's a constant evolving process of market research and feedback and where do we put our money and that sort of thing. I will say though that the end of the last few years, up until the pandemic, had been exploding, especially here, and it really overflowed into what was going on in California, what was going on in Japan, and even China now. The whole industry was rising. More was being built. The parent companies were putting more money, both Disney and Universal, putting more money into these parks, expanding the experiences, expanding what people could come see and do, which, some of it hits the mark, some of it doesn't, but it's generally good for the whole industry, and there's generally more to do and see. So, they're always going to roll.
I guess from the perspective of, let's take Universal, for example, because I was there for the opening of Epcot. Mm-hmm. So that was exciting, that first Epcot.
Right, opening. Yes.
But with Universal, I remember going on the tram and everything being interactive, and your tour guide was very in with you. If you've been on these rides lately, it's just as simply of, okay, here we are at the Psycho House, video. Here we are at the tree, video. Right. Here we are at the video. It's like, this is not a tour anymore. You could do this on YouTube.
That's a giant shift that Universal's experienced. And I was a fan of the Universal before it was essentially a theme park. As I said before, got a long-running interest in the history of the movie studio and the backlot and the sets. I took the tour for the first time in 1985 when I was in high school. So right in the middle of like Back to the Future, all that.
I No. I beat you because I remember in '79, Cylons were on the tour, and you could go through the Galactica, and you could sit.
They were still there in '85. Yes, it was still there in '85.
Yeah.
Yes, which of course blew my mind as well. I knew it was going to be there, but all of that's sort of that golden age of the studio tour, and this is behind the scenes of an actual movie studio. And of course, throughout the '80s, there was so much being done on the Universal lot. All these '80s TV series, 90% of what you think of when you think of the '80s, it was being done at Universal, and so you could get some glimpse of it on the studio tour, and that was real. I mean, it was fake, it was TV shows, but the tour was the hook. You're there at a real movie studio. You might see David Hasselhoff in the kit car. I mean, he literally would buzz the trams sometimes. It was really there. They were making Psycho sequels at the time. It was all real movie stuff going on. And then the theme park idea kind of started taking over. And that's in response to guests, what guests come and see and they want more of. So they go in that direction. And at the same time, the movie industry was moving a little bit more away from the studio system, a little bit more away from using a backlot all the time. It kind of peaked in the 80s, late 80s. More locations, digital technology made it easier to go on location, to do all that kind of stuff.
Where you're forgetting a big part of it is budget.
Yeah.
It's cheaper to go to Canada or Georgia.
Oh, absolutely. And then there's that. Then the whole California thing, just, Florida, it was Texas for a while. It was New Zealand. I literally worked on a movie that from one Friday to the next Monday, and this was even coming from Florida, stopped production and moved the whole production to New Zealand because even Florida was too expensive. That was a weird project. Yeah, so it happens. They follow the money. They follow where it's most cheapest, but really most efficient to do the work. And you can't blame them. So that's the direction the whole industry has gone, and that's why you see the Universal lot in California mostly being transformed into more and more theme park. But the numbers don't lie. People come and see it. So as a company, you can't blame them for pursuing that.
But wait a minute. I'm going to stop you there on one point.
Yes.
That's why people come to see it, but they don't know any better, because when they see it for the first time, they think that, okay, video
right.
is the norm. And You know,
Sure.
I don't. At some point, I think the public's going to get, you know, their brain's going to kick in and say, you know what, I can watch these videos on YouTube. Why am I paying, you know, $60 a day to sit on a
Right.
tram and watch TV?
Well,
So,
and that is another thing, another phenomena that we had seen in the theme park industry. Forget the movie studio to theme park thing, but even just in the theme park industry, there's different ride systems, and some of the rides relied more heavily on video and virtual reality and things like that. And when they start going too much in that direction, you start to realize I could do this at home. And then especially with the home technology increasing as well, you almost can do this at home. So then they've had to shift their thinking. Well, what is it that people will come here to see? They're not coming here to see video screens. They don't want more video screens.
I
They
want
want something in front of
animatronic.
them. Oddly enough, that's what they want to come see, is they want it in front of them, whether it's
Right.
live actors, animatronics, and that's what's fascinating.
See,
So
I prefer any of the attractions that have interactive actors. I think as long as, you know, they remain in character and they have fun and react
sure,
to the audience, I think
absolutely,
those are the ones, the memories that you're going to remember. You know, Princess
absolutely,
Leia, she hugged me, or you know,
yes,
a
hmm,
Cylon attacked me. You know, that kind of thing.
absolutely, yeah. That's real. It's in front of you. It's immersive. That's the word they always use.
Wow.
Uh, that's the hook. You're absolutely right. And you know how you achieve that and how you budget it. That's they're always chasing that, trying to figure out how do we do it more efficiently. And it swings like a pendulum. They'll go one
Wow.
direction
Okay, we need
1 year and then go back the other way.
we need to get this back on you because this is a great.
Refocus.
I mean, I love that fact that I got to meet you, and thanks to Martin. Let's give a shout out to Martin to introduce us. Uh,
Absolutely, yes, yes,
it's nice
for
to see.
sure.
I mean, he's across the pond. You're in Florida. I'm like, I need to find
Yes,
lots of people like you guys. So, real quick
yeah,
for the
absolutely.
audience, 'cause we don't want to lose everybody. You had mentioned this earlier. You don't know what to say, but in reality, somebody wants to do prop making or designing or, you know,
Right.
set building. What advice do you give somebody who's thinking about it?
Um, well, in a way, just start doing it, whether it's for yourself or something local. I don't know. I mean, it's
Have
very
you
much
worked in theater?
location, like real estate location. I have not truly worked in theater, no, no, but that is another foray into the same thing. The best way to look at it is it's all the same skill set. Whether you're building sets for, you know, a little theater in a town in Nebraska or what, I mean, it frankly is the same. It's the same skill set. Most people working in movies, unless it's director or whatever, they didn't go to film school. They came from some other industry.
Right.
You know, construction, electronics, engineering, various art fields. Um, it, it's very much location based. Like if you're really trying to get into movies or whatever, you know, you kind of have to be where they're doing it. So that is the first thing. But as far as developing the skill set, it's like just do it. And I didn't. You asked this earlier. I didn't really go to school for any of this. It was a hobby. It was stuff I was already doing. And then I got my foot in the door because I was able to do a few things. But then the rest was on the job learning. Um, the biggest piece of advice I can say for having a success in the field is it's 50%, you know, being able to do the work, but it's 50% being able to work well with other people.
Oh,
This is all a very collaborative effort, and you know that from either acting or frankly even doing the kind of thing you're doing now. You have to be able to you have to be the kind of person who other people want to work with. Uh, as much as possible, you leave your ego at the door. You bring your skills.
yeah.
You
Problem
you give
solver,
of your skills.
team builder, that kind of thing.
Problem solving. It's
Yeah.
all problem solving, and the more you do, the more you learn, and the more you learn, the more you can do. Be hungry for that knowledge and
Oh,
increasing your skills.
and wear different
Try
hats.
something you haven't tried before.
Yeah, wear different hats
Wear
sometimes.
different yeah, and that's been the key to success for a lot of people working in these industries in Florida. It's a little tougher in places like California because you have very unionized systems where they tend to pigeonhole you in a one job or another. If you want to do this job, you got to be in another union. So that's a little bit of a restriction. But say just learn the trade. You know,
Wow.
if you can do the work, you end up getting opportunities to do the work. And then the more people you work with, the more people you'll get to work with. You know, it's
Right.
that sounds political when you say it's who you know, but it's who you've worked with.
It's more than political because I've experienced it myself. I actually worked on Back to the Future 2 and 3, and I got that job because I worked on Beauty and the Beast, a TV series, and from that I got, the Next Generation. I did things like that. So it's all connection. It's all, who you know. And
Sure.
you, as a person, you want to
It
work.
absolutely is. And those connections, biggest blessing of the whole thing is to get to do this sort of creative, collaborative stuff with other people who are doing the same thing. And, 12, 14 hours a day goes by quicker than any 8-hour-a-day job you'll ever have. It just does. When you get in that groove, it just flows.
And there's nothing like getting a pat on the back from your coworkers or your collaborators and saying, building each other up with what artistry you're doing. So
absolutely.
Wow. Okay.
Absolutely. In fact, that's the kind of thing that has brought me back. Oh, I was gonna say that's kind of what's brought me back to even. We got hooked up through the whole Sequest thing. Having time off, personal job ended because of the pandemic here, and I've been going through all the stuff. Yes, I've been going through all this stuff in the attic and finding all my old Sequest stuff. He's been recreating. This is one of his shirts, actually. I should give him a plug. He's doing replicas of the Sequest shirts we had on the show and some other Sequest stuff.
Can I get one?
And we just connected over that. What's that?
Can I get one too?
I'll get you his information. I should plug him. He's doing great work. I've helped him by giving him scans and things of the original costume pieces, and he's creating some really cool stuff. A lot. If you want to spend some money on Sequest stuff, he's the place to do it nowadays. But it just took me sharing the experiences with people.
Okay, just so you know, I did a whole show, one of my collectible shows, on the Sequest stuff that I had. I don't know if you get a chance, you might want to catch it.
I watched that.
Mine is more the merchandise stuff because it's original.
Yes.
So I was kind of geeking out on my little Check action figure, and I got patches and all kinds of stuff. So which you probably designed, right? The patches.
I did design a lot of patches for costumes, and so if it was a carryover from first season, is not something I designed. Like I didn't design the UEO logo or the rank patches, but I did do anything new that popped up in season 2 or 3. I most likely did. I think I sent you a picture of some of the patch designs I did. So there was some of that, and that's where it would overlap into other departments, like the costuming department.
Okay. Wow. Okay, Mark. I've got to say thank you so much for doing this for me. Special thank you. Fun. Yeah, especially thank you to Martin who introduced me to you, and we went off on all kinds of tangents. I hope that was okay.
Okay with me, it's okay with you. One more thing I wanted, you had asked earlier, maybe before we started recording, what that was behind me. I've got a bunch of helmets and prop stuff, but the wall itself is actually a piece from the Sequest set that we, not the Sequest ship itself, but another set of an underwater base somewhere that we used in a couple different episodes, would repaint it and reuse it for something else. I know it was in season 2.
Okay, how do you put that under your arm and walk off the stage and take that home?
Well, we have to have a couple people's arms to do it, but it's all made of wood, so it's very heavy. I took home some wall sections. A friend of mine who was set designer on the show took home some pieces. They auctioned everything off at the end of the show. If you were there at the time, you probably could have taken truckloads of stuff for free. Wow. They tried to sell everything, but of course, nobody has room or way to transport gigantic fiberglass walls and things like that. So, sets are usually thrown away on most everything. If you're at the studio, sometimes they save sections to reuse, but for the most part, stuff is dumpstered. It's the cheapest way to get rid of it. Storing it costs money. So we were able to take pieces home. And when we had our house built here in '99, I used it to build a closet wall for my office space. So it's just a fun little sci-fi-esque feel to the room.
Geek.
So,
Geek. Anyway.
Well, hey, guilty.
And tomorrow, behind you, I see. It looks like a phaser from 3. I see a blaster from Galactica.
Yeah.
Oh.
Oh,
What
oh,
is
oh!
that?
There's a droid back there. That's more Star Warsy stuff that's hanging around. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, those are
Wow.
various. I've got a few phasers. Yeah, he's extra castings from some of my Star Wars projects.
Wow.
But I've got Galactica blasters and phasers and a gun from Visitor.
Oh, I see V. Yeah.
Yeah,
What's on
yeah.
the bottom shelf?
The bottom shelf of on the far over here. Hold on, that's a Buck Rogers pistol. It's not a real thing. It's just a casting from eBay. That other gun is a gun I built for Swamp Thing TV series. It was a laser gun.
Wow.
Um,
Okay.
just just stuff to put on the wall. It's kind of fun.
Awesome. Awesome. Okay, Mark, this has been amazing. I appreciate you doing the show.
Enjoy
Your
it.
wealth of information. I could talk to you for 3 more days, nonstop. I'm sure.
Sure, why not?
She's, he's like, no. Okay. But anyway, for those of you who haven't yet,
All right, I love that.
for those of you who haven't yet, check around. There's a subscribe button here. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, and don't forget to click the little bell thing. That'll let you know when I drop a video, and you can watch it whenever you have the convenience. Real quick, as quick as I can, the 5 other shows I have are the TGA's Mysterious Chamber of Collectibles. That's where I collect things and pull them out of my closet, like the Sequest toys, and show you what I've been collecting for over the years. I have my Unboxing the Geek Authority show, which is actually stuff that is sent to me. I open it up. You see it, I see it for the first time. We all see it for the first time. My reactions are genuine, especially when I get Grogu stuff. It's like, ah. Anyway, I also have my TGA's reviews, commentary, and opinion show, where I talk about different shows that I like, some things that I don't like, and so on and so forth. I believe Sequest, Star Trek, Space 1999 are among them. I also have a show called Talk About, where I gather my family and friends, and we talk about classic TV shows like I just mentioned, Space 1999, or new shows like we have one on Cobra Kai. My favorite show that I think you should check out on Talk About is the one where we talk about Disneyland and California Adventure closing and what we miss when we don't have it anymore. And it got very emotional. It's supposed to be one show. People were showing their wares, their toys, their favorite things. It was really cool. The last show that I have is called Making Entertainment. The Geek Authority's Making Entertainment, where I go inside a production that's yet to be released, produced, or coming soon kind of situation. I talk to the actors, writers, directors, producers, whoever's involved. You get to hear about how this production is made so that when you actually watch it or see it when it's released, you have a little more knowledge of what it takes to do a project like that. Other than that, Mark, again, thank you so much. This was, again, I can't thank you. Did I thank you? It's like
once or twice, yes, yeah. But thank you as well. Enjoy it immensely. My favorite part is sharing some of these experiences. I wish I could have everybody with me every time I do something fun, just so you can enjoy it. I try to
absolutely
put it out there as much as I can.
What's even better is you're willing to share these experiences, and you allow nerds like me to ask you questions that only a nerd would ask. So
absolutely.
Anyway, so let's
I have to talk about it somewhere.
Absolutely. So everybody, let's say goodbye. Thanks for watching, and of course, we'll see you on the next one. Bye bye for now.
Bye. Thank you.